Hello, and welcome to the Pregnancy Health Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Bell. Micro events can be a powerful tool in your fundraising plan. These small personal gatherings may be bite-sized, but they can deliver significant results for your organization. Today, we're joined by Fundraising Pro, Lisa Stueckemann, and Heartbeat's Kathy Jerman to explore practical strategies, success stories, and tips for incorporating micro events in your annual fundraising plan. Thanks for joining us today, ladies. Kathy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Lauren. It's always fun to be on the podcast. So I'm excited to welcome our guest today. Like Lauren mentioned, Lisa Stueckemann. And Lisa is a trusted expert in nonprofit fundraising and the author of the book, Fundraising Rebel. Some of you will know her as the instructor of Heartbeat's annual Pregnancy Help Institute development track, where she equips leaders with practical, effective fundraising strategies to help strengthen their organizations and advance their missions. Lisa has been a longtime friend of Heartbeat, sharing her expertise through conference workshops, academy webinars, and several other training opportunities over the years. Beside her incredible knowledge, she is simply a joy to learn from, full of energy, engaging in her teaching style, and passionate about helping organizations connect more deeply with their donors and supporters. So today we're talking about micro events, and I can't think of anyone better to have this conversation with than Lisa. So welcome to the podcast.
Oh, Kathy, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. And this is a topic that I love to talk about. So let's get into it. And really my goal for this conversation is that people would leave feeling more confident and equipped in trying something new. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. So how about if we start off maybe that you tell our listeners a little bit about your background in pregnancy help and how you got involved?
Oh, sure. Well, I've been in the nonprofit sector for well over 15 years. And I've served in a variety of capacities. I've been frontline fundraiser, major gift officer, event planner, corporate philanthropy, um, all that. And then I went into leadership and served as director of development and then eventually the vice president of philanthropy for a pregnancy resource center here in Florida. And I served there for over 4 years. And then it was about a year and a half ago that I moved into consulting. I felt the Lord leading me to perhaps share what had been successful for me over the years to a broader audience. And that has just brought me incredible joy. And it's a privilege. And so Fundraising Rebel is the name of my book, but it's also the website. And there's some free resources on my website and the ability to connect with me too if you have questions after this conversation and want to dig in a little bit more.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, Lisa. And so for those who might be unfamiliar with the concept, what exactly is a micro event and how is it different from a traditional fundraising event?
Yeah, it's so different. It's so much easier, and I think it's a lot more fun. First of all, a micro event is a very intimate gathering with perhaps only 8 to maybe 20 supporters. Normally, that would take place in a location that you already have access to. So your center is really the ideal place to have it. These donors are strategically chosen, and we'll probably get into that a little bit more. And we're providing for them a much more in-depth experience, a very meaningful experience, right in our center versus a large scale or what are even being called a macro event that probably takes place in a ballroom with a lot of people. And it can be harder to make that a meaningful experience. It's hard to make a ballroom more than a ballroom. And when we start getting into guest numbers that are over the hundreds, then the meaningful quotient tends to decrease. More people, it becomes less meaningful. It becomes harder to hear, harder to see. And it can feel almost transactional. And so when we create the micro event in your actual center, the ability to feel a deeper connection to the work is much easier and flows much more naturally. So in summary, a micro event is a small event that takes place on property that you already have access to with donors who have already shown interest. but are ready to have a deeper connection, a more meaningful connection with your work.
That sounds great. So then can you kind of share with us like what does the actual event itself look like? Like what would the agenda for the evening look like?
Yeah. So the agenda for the evening is basically um, taking them. Well, first of all, let me back up and say, um, it's important to note what you're trying to accomplish in the event before you even jump into the logistics. I know it's so easy when we get into event planning to start talking about like how we're setting the table versus doing the hard work of what are we raising money for? Is it specific? How much money do we need to raise? And then backing that up with how do we tell a story that gets to that ask? So I really want listeners to consider, what do you need? And many of you just thought in your head, as much as I can get. Okay, so
Nice.
we want to slow the roll on that a little bit. We want to be more strategic there. Is there a specific need that we're trying to accomplish? I have done micro events that were for center renovations.
Mhm.
So much easier to bring a donor into your center that needs renovation than trying to forecast that from a ballroom screen. Donors like to see the broken stuff. They want to be a part of making something wrong right. So show them your old Dell computers. Show them your stained ceiling tiles. Show them the couch that your mom gave you. Let's show them that so they can go, oh, well, we could help with that. So we need to know what we're trying to raise money for. And if it's for operational expenses, there's no better place to show them what the operation does, what it looks like, what it feels like, than bringing them into the center. So know that first. Now getting back to the question that you asked, Kathy. We
Mhm.
we want to take them on a journey through your center. And so usually what I encourage centers to do is to pick maybe 4 stops, like on a little tour. And you may be already giving donor tours, like one-on-one tours. But I would love for you to create 4 specific stops. And that could be, 1, the lobby, and actually showing them the paperwork that a client would fill out. I realize that a lot of this is electronic now, but we can still print up a page and hand it to them on a clipboard and show them. That helps to increase their confidence in the legitimacy of the work that we do by them actually seeing the paperwork that's probably similar to the paperwork they filled out at the ophthalmologist the week before, the dermatologist, whatever. That's an important stop. I love to have a stop that happens in the counseling room. Where we can have someone explain or share a story of what recently happened. Obviously, we're not sharing any protected information, but it can be really powerful to be able to point to a chair and say, there was a client who said yes to Jesus in that chair this week. It's a really meaningful moment. Or there was a woman who said yes to life in that chair. That's really can be a very meaningful moment. I also love a stop, obviously, in the ultrasound room. And if you have permission to be able to share an actual ultrasound that happened in that room, incredibly powerful. Where will a donor see this other than in your center? And then lastly, I love a stop in the boutique. I find that donors get it there when they see beautiful brand new clothing with tags on it. There's a dignity play versus a pity play there that donors can really respond well to. I also love showing a bright course class in that stop so they can see the education that your clients are receiving. That would be um, the pre-event tour that we're doing. Then we go into a space to have dinner, perhaps, or brunch or whatever you want. It's all your freedom to operate. But I've always had a really lovely dinner, say in a conference room. Or I recently toured a center that wanted me to plan the micro event for them. And we found that if we moved some of the furniture out of the lobby, that would be a lovely place to have maybe 16 people for dinner. Um, but when they have had that meaningful one-on-one, like them looking at the chair, them looking at the form, them looking at the actual ultrasound table, them looking at the cute baby clothes. When we get to a point of coming to where we're going to ask them or give them opportunities to ask questions, we would never do a Q&A at a macro event. That would be crazy. But we can do it at a micro event. And some of these donors that are more engaged may have been holding questions for a long time. We've increased the emotion that they're feeling about the work through that tour. Now they're going to ask more questions that will open up the ability for them to give more, pledge more, promise more. And so ideally, it starts with some type of tour and then moves into a dinner and a very short program and then a strong ask. So that's the general flow.
Yeah, that's great. And I love the tour of the center because you're right, that's so powerful for them to walk in and, like you said, point out that chair that's where that mom got saved or she chose
Mhm.
life for her baby. And so there's nothing more impactful than that for them to see where their money goes. And I also like to before when you said about, show them your old computers or your stained ceiling tiles. Donors like specific things to give to. And if they know that it's a concrete need that you have, it's easy for them to say, "Oh, I can help with that." And that is so meaningful for our center. So I love that, and I love just that it's a brief tour that you're focusing on the main thing, and they're almost walking through kind of a client appointment, so to speak,
Yeah.
and then being able to see that boutique. So why? So you've described these events as having a really big impact. So what have you seen when or embrace this approach? Like, what kind of impact does it have?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when a strong goal is set for what to raise, because I think that's the question you're
Mhm,
asking, right? Is
mhm.
really about dollars raised. I want to be really clear that on the invitation, and whether we want to get into this detail or not, I think a beautiful paper invitation is really important for this. And because you're only looking to have, say, 10 to 16 people come, we can do the nice invitation, like the heavy paper with the foil print that we've always
Right.
wanted to use, but we can't for the macro because it's too expensive. On that invitation, I want you to actually write the dollar amount that you want to raise. And that's really important. One is because we're just being really clear. This is a fundraiser. Second of all, if the people who are being invited are not able to give at that time, they will RSVP no. It's an easy out for them. Because I only have a dozen seats, I need people who can give then, not future. So this is a very clear ask from the beginning. And so I have seen great results, hitting the target over and over again because the expectation is so clear. And we're also going to do really good research in regard to who we're going to invite. I recommend pulling reports that look at, let's say, cumulative giving over the last 2 to 3 years. And we want to look at those donors from highest gifts to lowest and look for people who can write checks of a certain amount. And this amount I'm talking about is, say that you want to raise, um, let's do easy math, $48,000. And you can fit 12 people in the space. So we are going to do simple math and try to find people who have given between, I would say, $4,000 and $8,000, because we've already seen history that they can. The temptation, and maybe we'll get into this later, of who we invite is we want to invite our favorite donors, our favorite people. But what I'm trying to suss out in the data are people to invite who you might not have talked to in a while, or they're the people who will say, "Oh, we used to go to your gala," or "We did for years, but we don't need to go anymore. We'll still give." And you hang up the phone and you're afraid, because why would they give now? They habitually have only given to the macro event. I'm trying to suss out donors and data who have maybe stepped away from the ministry because they just got tired of going to the same thing over and over. I want to bring them back into the fold. So it's data that's going to help me see who I should be inviting. We invite 3 to 5 times as many as we can fit in the room, who have given that amount that the data shows. So I already have proven givers. These aren't first-time givers. This is people who have a history with your organization. Those are who we're inviting. They know the amount that we're trying to raise, and they already know what we're raising it for because we put all of that in the invitation. All of that pre-work is ensuring that we have the best people in the room, the most prepared people in the room. They have historical data that shows us that they give, and that leads to strong results from these events. The strongest results I've seen, even people who have done more than goal, is because they did this pre-work, because their donors were essentially vetted to be a part of the experience. And so that's what leads to the strong results from these micro events.
That's great, Lisa. And you actually answered my next question, which was
Okay.
going to be how do you choose the
Yeah,
donors to invite? And I think that that's really important. It's not your new donors. It's the ones that have proven that they're all in, they believe in your mission, they love what you do, and they've given before. I remember too being in my center is, you'd have people that would that would maybe drop off. I can think of one person in particular that would drop off a sizable check every now and then, just out of the blue. And he would always say to us, let us, let me know if anything comes up, let me know, how I can help. Or even there's a couple churches that were the same way.
Mhm.
Those are the people I think you need to keep in mind because they've already given, a good
Yes,
amount, but then they're also saying, keep me in mind if you have a specific need. And so I think it's also thinking through those anecdotal things too of, conversations you've had with other donors and how they want to help and remembering, what especially is important to them, whether it's sharing the gospel or seeing a life saved or is it, the parenting and the education and the life skills? Because for some people, that's truly what's important is to see, their lives transformed and just have better opportunities. So I think those are all really, really great points to keep in mind when you're thinking about who to invite. Another question I have, and it's kind of shifting the topic a little bit, is
sure.
so for center, okay, I guess my question is it both and or either or? Like if you're used to having an annual banquet or a gala,
Oh,
are you saying like, okay, should we just stop doing these and just
yes.
do several micro events throughout the year? Do we do both? How would an organization make that decision? And I guess too, what goes along with it is, how do you get the board to
Yeah,
maybe come alongside that? Because sometimes they're just like, well, we've always done a banquet and they've always been successful. So we don't,
sure.
we don't want to try to fix something that's not broken. So
Right.
how would you suggest they go about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so glad you brought this up because this is like the practicality of the thing. So okay, I'll talk about the end, but then I'm going to back up and get there.
Sure.
There are multiple organizations that I work with in all areas of the nonprofit sector who are moving away from macro events and doing multiple micro events. The beautiful thing about these micro events is you can do the same one over and over all year long because different people are coming.
Right.
So the amount of planning time, the amount of brain space, like it's minuscule compared to how a macro event can dominate the brain space, the time of an organization. So there is a future that you can have that is specifically micro focused. Now, that being said, getting there is transition. And most probably what you'll have to do is continue with your macro events, but start introducing micro events. And it will be, the proof will be in the pudding in regard to, wow, board, let me talk to you about this micro event that our development team did or that I did 2 weeks ago that raised $25,000 and cost us 500.
Hmm.
I think I'm going to do it again. Do one of you want to come and see it? So there will have to be a strategic approach to moving in that direction. I do have a free download at fundraisingrebel.org for a 12-month fundraising activity plan. And I'd really recommend anyone on this call to download, and it's like the world's simplest spreadsheet, but it will help you to kind of map out maybe when you could insert these micro events in the plan in a way that won't make you cry, which is part of the goal. Also, micro events are a great thing to introduce if you're behind. So if your fundraising is lacking, and we're heading into the summer months here as we're recording this, there can be summer slumps. So it will take you a day and a half maybe to plan this whole thing, and to send those invitations out with like 4 weeks notice, 3 weeks notice. You could have a micro event after the 4th of July if you sat down to plan it this week. If you can see that you're getting behind in your fundraising, this is a perfect thing, a vehicle to insert to help generate funding. That will also show your board, hey, we were behind and we brought these people in. We talked about how we were behind and we didn't want to start to fall behind. And they jumped in and they helped us get ahead, or, um, cover that loss. That's another way to prove to the board, but it will take time. And I'm not saying that the macro events need to go away. That's a whole nother conversation. I think they really need to change. I think donors are getting bored. I think that we're in a time in history where getting dressed and going and celebrating and doing crazy fundraising activities just doesn't really fit well with what's happening in the world today. The Winkler Group, which is one of the best data gathering consulting services out there, they said we need to be aware in 2026 that we just might not get the same response because people are just sad. So, putting on the sparkly dress might just feel weird, but creating a more meaningful experience might be what people respond to because they want to make this world a better place. That's where we need to insert our messaging. So, yeah, that was maybe more than you wanted there, but
No, that was great.
it will
That's
take
great.
time. It will take
Yeah.
time.
But I love how these events can be really manageable and sustainable too. Because like you said, it doesn't take a lot of planning. Once you've got the invitation drafted, it's just a matter of, changing the date on it and the time or whatever, and
Right.
maybe the amount or whatever your goal is. But you're just duplicating the same kind of thing.
Mhm.
And you could do, like you said, like a dinner one night, but then maybe you decide to try a Saturday morning brunch
Correct.
or a Friday evening appetizer and dessert, or
Correct.
whatever you want to do. And so I think you can be really creative and making it very, very manageable and doable. And I also like how you said, that whether it's a development team or maybe just the executive director, but just, having a couple of your staff members there just to be able to help with the tour, and also having a board member. I think it's important to have
Yes.
them represented, that the whole board doesn't need to be there, but if you have a couple board members to just show like, hey, our board is truly involved, believes in our mission, and wants to get to know you as well. So I think that can just go a long way too in just making the whole event seem warmer and more personal. So I love all this. Uh,
Yeah, Kathy, I was going to say those board members, those staff members, those can be your tour stop guides.
right.
So, strategically assign them one of those stops. They're already there. And then when it comes time to the program, they can become your Q&A. That can be a panel that is asked questions, but they're already there. So, yeah, absolutely. I think having a board member there is ideal.
I agree. You kind of already answered this one, but when it comes to the actual presentation, what are the most important messages that should be communicating during the micro event? So you
Right.
kind of
So,
you kind of already talked about that, but after the tour, when they sit down for
yeah.
dinner and you do the short presentation.
Yeah, one thing I want to mention is the one of the greatest analogies that uh I think help understand what a micro event is the backstage tour. You know how like how cool it is, like if you get to go backstage of like a stadium or a theater, or you get to go to Hershey, Pennsylvania and see how the chocolate's made, and then you get to taste it later, like that kind
Right.
of thing. That's what we're trying to do here. Impossible, impossible to do in a macro event. Micro event, man, you got them right in there. And so we want to connect the stories that we choose to tell to what we're raising the funds for. So the story of the chair, if it's a woman saying yes to Jesus, saying yes to life in the chair, and it's a super sad looking chair, perfect for for clinic renovations. Um, if a woman said yes to life on the ultrasound table, but we need new equipment, that's a great story to tell there. So I really want these dots very strongly connected. And so then when we talk about the program, we're always going to talk about um, kind of the state of the ministry. So if you do an annual report, you're going to present probably 20% of the data that you normally share in an annual report, because your donors want to know that you're healthy, or they want to know why you're behind. And we're never afraid to tell that. Recently I saw an annual report from an organization that I knew was behind, and they didn't share any of that information. We have to be we have to be very transparent. Things are more expensive today. If you're behind, everybody understands. I just spent $4.50 on a bag of spinach. Like, we all get this, right? Why is my gas $5 a gallon? Everybody understands that things cost more. So let's tell them that, and let's share that that's, why we're behind. Some people are going to be like, yeah, I think it's terrible and I'll help you. We're never afraid to tell the truth, but that truth has to be connected to where you're headed. And so very important to share the state of the ministry, then to share what you're asking for and what that's going to cost. And that's basically all you're saying, because the tour already told the story. I don't think it's necessary for them to sit and watch a 5-minute video. You already told the story in a much more powerful way. Don't dumb it down because you're getting nervous. Let's let our executive director share the State of the Union and make the ask based on what was said in the invitation. Keep it really simple. I heard a phrase, be brief, be brilliant, be gone. That's it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. No, I love that. So what mistakes do you commonly see
Oh,
organizations make when they host these? I mean, you kind of mentioned one, right, where they're not honest about the fact that they're behind and and they're
yeah.
giving this year. So what are some other mistakes that they make when they try to do these events?
Yeah. The number one mistake is we invite the wrong people.
Right.
And we don't trust the data, or we don't even pull it.
Hmm.
I guess I would just say, I've never really said this before. If you're not going to pull data on who to ask, then please don't do this. Do something
Right.
else. Just, I don't know, have a raffle. I don't do this. Because you need to trust your data. And I think that might just be a space in pregnancy help that we don't. I don't know if we're intimidated by it or whatever, but data's your friend. So we try to make this into an open house.
Mm.
And I'm not saying you shouldn't have an open house, but when you have an open house, I don't know that you should have a goal for what you're going to raise, because everybody will be disappointed. If you want to have an open house, have an open house. Just have it. Give out cupcakes. I don't know, whatever. Just
Right.
do it.
'Cause the goals are completely different with an
This is
open house.
that's right. This is a completely different thing. Or another downfall I've seen is you do pull data, and you do pull the names of the people you know. The ones you don't know, you're like, oh, I don't know, we shouldn't ask. That's a lot of money to ask. I know they've given before, but instead, let's invite these people where they drive a really nice car and she has a lovely handbag. And let's see if if they'll come. And so we mix people who are already committed to the mission to people who are not yet. See, what we're also trying to achieve here is, when we're having this dinner, we're putting together like-minded individuals who have maybe never met before, and we're trying to create a community where they're going to work together on a shared purpose. If you bring someone who doesn't know anything about the organization, then that water line just dropped. I'm trying to develop even some friendships over the dinner table. Like, "Oh my gosh, you care about this as much as I do too? Wow, I didn't know. Where do you live? Where do you go to church? How did you get connected?" There is a safety, and we want to encourage that as much as possible. So I've seen these events not do as well as they could have when we don't have the right people in the room, where we don't trust the data, or we kind of mix people just because we feel uncomfortable. And there is some bravery that needs to happen here, but it will be worth it in the end.
Yeah, I love that. You're not trying to create a seating chart for a wedding, right?
That's exactly right.
It's
Yes.
okay for strangers to come and to meet, and it's
Yes.
beautiful to think about that community that you're forming. And who knows, they might be serving and volunteering together at the center,
Yeah.
later on, and because they struck up a conversation and a friendship. So I think that that's really beautiful. So Lisa, is there anything else that I haven't asked you that you feel like you need to share? Or if there was anything you want to leave our listeners with, one key takeaway, something about micro events that you just think is truly important, that if you could just grab these couple things, like, what would those be?
Well, the first thing I want to say is that you really can't mess it up.
Mm.
I mean, if you bring people who already care about your mission, who we're just trying to encourage to give more. Okay, this is a way that we're trying to increase their engagement. And you bring them to the scene of the work where injustices are being made right. Just being inside your center is going to be so exciting for them. And I know it's like, well, we go to work here every day, so I don't really think it's that special. But for them, I mean, like, miracles happen.
Right.
So, I mean, you really can't mess it up. So, that's one of the things I really want you to leave with. Second of all, there is a framework for this. I do have it all written out in my book, that, I mean, like, literally step by step how to do it. Also, you can reach out to me. I want to help you. So, because I want you to succeed. So it's important to know that there's help out there. You can't mess this thing up. But three, you do have to follow the plan. This isn't a time for you to get creative on something you've never done before. Like, just do it the way that it's mapped out. And then if you want to kind of riff on it later. Um, and the other thing I would say too is I need you to be brave, because there's going to be voices that are going to tell you that this isn't the time to try something new. But we know that the Lord loves fresh work. And we know that he wants us to be brave. And so careful how much airtime you're going to give to the voices that are outside of your head, but also the ones that are inside of your head. And take the step, be brave, because in the end, it's really exciting to spend 90 minutes with people who care about what you care about. And so I think you're going to love it. I also think you're going to love that the setup is going to take about 45 minutes and the teardown 15.
Right.
So treat yourself to that too, but be brave, and be careful about the voices that you're listening to.
I love that, Lisa. I think this is really inspiring, and I just love the simplicity of it. Like you said, there's a plan you need to follow and stick with it. And if you stick with it, it's likely going to work for you. So,
Right.
yeah, and just the simplicity of it, because we all know what it's like to put on a banquet or a gala, and it's months and months and months of work, and not just for the executive director or the development director, but chances are your whole team is involved in all of that setup and decorating and
Yeah.
all the things. So I just love the simplicity of this, and that it's so easy to do multiple times throughout the year. So
Yeah.
I really love this. This is great information. So Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been very informative. I hope our listeners will put this into practice. So thanks for listening. And Lauren, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Well, thanks so much, Kathy, and thank you again, Lisa. This has been incredibly insightful, and I know you've given our community just a lot to digest and to think about as they're headed into the next fundraising season. Also, Lisa mentioned several resources. Her website and how to get a hold of her. We'll have all those things in the show notes, so be sure to check those out. In addition to that, we'd like you to like, share, and subscribe what you hear here on Pregnancy Help Podcast. That way you won't miss an episode just like this one. With that, we want to thank you so much for listening today and hope that you all have a great day. Thanks again. Bye-bye.